女士们、先生们，大家上午好，欢迎出席国务院新
Ladies
闻
and
办公室新
gentlemen,
闻
good
发布会
morning.。
今天我
Welcome
们进行
to
经济数据
the
例行
press
发布。
conference
我们
of
非常高兴邀请
SCIO.
到
Today we have a
国家
regular
统计局
presser
新闻
on
发言人
China's
傅林辉先
national
生，
economic
请他为大家介
performance.
绍
And today we have the honor to have
2021
with
年
us
8月份
Fu
国民
Linghui,
经济运行情
spokesperson of
况，
the National
回
Bureau
答
of
大家感兴趣
Statistics.
的问题。
He
下面
will
我们首先
update
请
you
傅林
about
辉
the
先生
performance
做介绍。
of our economy in August.
各位
Now
媒
let
体
me
记者
hand
朋
it
友们，大
over
家上午
to
好。
Fu
按照惯
Linghui.
例呢，我先通报一下8
Dear
月
friends
份
from the
国
media,
的情况，
good
然后
morning.
回答大家关心的问题。
As usual, I will update you about the
8月
economic
份国民
performance
经
in
济发
August,
展
and
韧
then I will
性
take
持
some
续显
questions.
现。8月
In
份，在
August,
以习近
our
平同志为
economy
核心的
continued
党
to
中央
show
坚强
great
领导下，
resilience under
各地
the
区各部门
strong
认真贯
leadership
彻落
of the
实党
CPC
中央
Central
工务
Committee
院
with
决策
Comrade
部
Xi Jinping at its
科
core
学
and the
统
State
筹
Council.
疫情
All
防
the
控和
different
经济社会发展。
departments and governments
国
at
民经
different
济
levels
继
have
续保
followed
持
through
恢复
the
态势，转型
requirements of
升
the
级
State
持续
Council and
推进，
CPC Central
创
Committee.
新活力不断释
We have
放，
maintained a high
就业物
momentum
价总
of
体稳定，质
transformation
量
and
效益稳
unleashed
步提高，
more
主要宏观
vitality
指
of
标处于
innovation.
可以
Quality
预
and
见。
efficiency have both improved.
工
All
业
the
生产稳
major
定增长，
parameters are
高基础
within
制造业
reasonable
增长加
range.
快。8月份全国规模以上工业增加值
High-end
同比增长
manufacturing has
5.3%，
increased
两
dramatically,
年平均
and
增长
the
5.4%，
year-on-year
7月份回落
added
0.2%。
value of
环比
industries
增长
above designated
0.3
sizes
亿。
reached
分
5.3%,
三大门类看，
and
采矿
the
业增加
month-on-month
值同比
increase
增长
reached
2.5%， 制造业同比
0.31.
增长
For
5.5%，
mining,
电力、热
it
力、燃气
increased
及水生产
2.5%,
服务业同比增长 6.3%，
electricity,
高基
water,
础制造业增加值
and
同比增长
supply
10.3%。 以
increased
7月
by
份加快2.7个百分点，
13.5%
两年
compared
平均
to
增长
compared
12.8%，
to
比
July.
加
It's
快 0.1
widened
个百分
by
点。分产品看，新能源汽车、
2.8%.
工业机器人、集成
By
电路、
product
微型计
categories,
算机设备
EVs,
产量同比分别增
robots,
长
integrated circuits,
151.9%、
microcomputers
57.4%、
have increased
12.4%、
57.9%, 53.4%, and the two-year annual growth both exceeded 12%. By economic sectors, the added value of state-holding enterprises increased by 4.6% year-on-year. Shareholding enterprises increased by 6.1% year-on-year, and private sector increased by 4.2% in the two-year annual growth increased by 6.6%. In that, the medicine and power supply sector increased by 4.8% and 7.8% respectively. For 18 consecutive months, it's above the reasonable range of scope. From January to July, the profit of enterprises above designated sizes reached 4.9 trillion yuan, up by 57.3% year-on-year. The annual two-year growth reached 20.2%. Second, the service industry continues to recover, and information transmission, software, and IT and other modern service sectors grow significantly. In August, the national service sector production parameter increased by 4.8% year-on-year. The two-year growth reached 4.4%. The growth point slowed by 1.2% as compared to July. Information transmission, software, and IT increased by 6.2%. Rental and business services increased by 11.4%. By sectors, the production parameter of 8 sectors have all maintained stable growth, in which information transformation, software, and IT increased by 20.9%. From January to July, the revenue of service enterprises above designated sizes increased by 20.8% year-on-year. The annual two-year growth increased by 10.9%. Information, software, and IT increased by 24.2%, 21.1% respectively in terms of their revenue. In August, the service sector business activities parameter stood at 45.2%. Wholesale monetary financial services and capital financial services are all above are about 54%. 3. Market sales continues to increase. In August, the total retail sales of the society reached 3.4395 trillion yuan, up by 2.5% year-on-year. The two-year average growth grew by 1.5%. The gross margin slowed by 2.1% as compared to July. In August, by operating regions, the total retail sales exceeded 2.995 trillion yuan, up by 2.3% year-on-year. The total retail sales in rural areas amounted to 444.5 billion yuan, up by 3.4% year-on-year. By categories, business goods saw a total retail of 3.09 trillion yuan, up by 3.3%. If we look at the upgrading consumption, it's very active. Sports and entertainment consumption and culture-related consumption increased by 22.7% and 20.4% respectively. Beverage sales and Chinese medicine, food and oil products increased by 11.8%, 10.2%, and 9.5% respectively from January to August. Total sales online reached 8.1 trillion yuan, up by 19.7%, in which the physical goods sales exceeded 6.6 trillion yuan, up by 15.9%. We have seen steady growth of fixed asset investments and also rapid increase of manufacturing and private sector. From January to August, fixed asset investments reached 34.69 trillion yuan, up by 8.9%. The annual two-year growth reached 4%. In August, it registered a year-on-year increase of 0.16%, and by categories from January to August, infrastructure increased by 2.9%. For investment in the manufacturing sector, it increased by 15.7% year-on-year, and the average two-year growth reached 3.3%. Investment in real estate industries increased by 10.9%, and the average two-year growth rate hit 7.7%. The total sales of properties reached more than 11.4 trillion square meters, increased by 15.9%. And by sectors, investment in the first industry increased by 18.1%, in the second industry increased by 12.9%, and in the third industry, investments grew by 6.8%, and private investments also increased by 11.5%, and the average two-year growth hit 3.9%. The growth speed widened by 0.5 percentage point as compared to January to July. High-tech industry investment increased by 18.9%, and the average two-year growth increased by 13.4%. E-commerce, verification and testing service increased by 13.0% and also 23.6%. Investment in social sectors increased by 13.3%. The average two-year growth hit 10.7%, in which health and medicine and education investment increased by 33.8% and 12.2% respectively. 5. Commodity imports and exports continued to increase. In August, the total imports and exports of goods hit 3.4 trillion yuan, increased by 18.9%, in which exports hit 1.9 trillion yuan, increased by 15.7% year-on-year, and imports reached 1.5 trillion yuan, increased by 23.1%. We have maintained a trade surplus of 373.3 billion yuan from January to August. Total trade of goods amounted to 24.78 trillion yuan, up by 23.7%. Trade structure continues to increase from January to August. Mechanical products saw a total trade increase of 23.8%, accounting for 58.8% of China's total foreign trade. And general trade products saw a total volume increased by 62%. The total imports and exports of private enterprises accounted for 48.1% of China's total trade volume. 6. We have maintained overall stability in employment and the job market. From January to August, we have added 9.38 million jobs in urban and rural areas in China, reaching 85.3% of the annual target. In August, the registered unemployment rate hit 5.1%, equaling the level of July. For locals, the registered unemployment rate is 5.2%. For migrant workers, the registered unemployment is 5.0%. For people aging between 16 and 24, the registered unemployment rate is 15.3%. The average weekly working hours for employees nationwide is 47.5 hours. 7. Overall stability is maintained for consumer price index. In August, CPI increased by 0.8%, and the gross margin widened by 0.2 percentage points as compared to July. By categories, food, alcohol, and beverage and alcohol dropped by 2%, clothing increased by 0.5%, housing costs increased by 1.1%, livelihood products increased by 0.6%. Pork dropped by 44.9%, vegetable dropped by 1.5%, food price increased by 0.8%, fresh vegetable increased by 5%. After deduction of food and energy price, the core CPI was up by 1.2%. From January to August, the overall CPI increased by 0.6%. In August, the shipment price of industrial products increased by 9.5%, widened by 0.5 percentage point against July, and it was an increase of 0.7% year-on-year. From January to August, the shipment price of industrial products and the purchase price index increased by 6.8% and 8.6% respectively. In general, our national economy in August maintained an overall stable and steady momentum, but we must also be mindful that there are severe international situations, and domestically, the epidemic is emerging sporadically, so we have to continue to consolidate the foundations of our economic recovery. Going forward, we will continue to follow the Xi Jinping thoughts of socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era and follow through the decisions made by CPC Central Committee and the State Council. We will continue to focus on epidemic prevention and control and make sure that the economy performs within reasonable range so as to promote fast economic recovery. Thank you very much to Fu Linghui, and now the floor is open to questions. Thank you very much. I'm with CMG, and from the parameters released, you can see that there is a obvious increase against July. How do you see the impact from COVID-19, and what is your general comments on our economic performance in August? In August, we faced arduous international environment. Domestically, the epidemic is showing some bumps. So due to all those factors, the year-on-year increase of the economy in August slowed down, but in general, we have seen rapid increase of major parameters. For example, from January to August, the added value of industries above designated sites increased by 8.1%, and service index increased by 6.7%, and total consumer goods and retail increased by 18.1%. And if you look at the annual 2-year growth, all the major parameters are maintained at a stable manner. And in August, the added value for enterprises above designated sites in industry increased by 18.1%, and from January to August, the investment in fixed assets increased by 4%. So this is generally stable. And if you look at the exports and imports, the growth speed even outperformed that of July. In general, we have maintained a momentum of recovery, and that is reflected in the following 3 areas. First, if you look at the macroeconomic parameter, they are all within reasonable scope and ranges. The average 2-year growth for industry and trade and service sector showed good growth signs. It's up by 6.6% and 6.2% respectively. Employment was also maintained in a stable manner. From January to August, registered unemployment rate was 5.2%, and this is below the targets that we set for the annual unemployment rate. In August, the figure stood at 5.1%, equaling that of July. By goods prices, CPI has maintained a mild momentum of growth, and from January to August, the total increase reached 0.6%, and this is also well below our targets. And in August, it increased by 0.8%, and the growth speed dropped by 0.2% against July. People's income also increased mildly. If you look at trade, we have maintained a trade surplus, and also the deficit of trade and services has been narrowed. China continues to leverage more foreign capital, and foreign capital reserve has stabilized towards the end of August. The outstanding amount of China's foreign capital reserve hit $3.2 trillion. So from all those parameters, you can see that we are maintaining a very stable situation. And there is a consolidated foundation for economic recovery. And if you look at agriculture, it has consolidated since the beginning of this year. And in this year, we have saw increased productivity of both rice and wheat. Judging by the situation right now, this year we have added the acre of autumn crops. We are having favorable atmospheric conditions nationwide for agriculture, and we have every confidence to have a good harvest for this year. Safety at work is also guaranteed, and overall energy price has maintained stable, and from January to August, crude oil production increased by 4.4% and 2.4% respectively, and power generated increased by 10.3%. We are also building the weak links of the industrial chain and the supply chain. We saw 48.2% increase and 1.7-fold of increase for China's overall power production. We are focusing more on the driving force of domestic circulation. In the first half of this year, the domestic economy contributed to 80% of China's overall economic growth, and that has also driven the growth of trade. The expanded trade demands also drove the growth of exports. The internal strength of our economic growth continues to develop. From January to August, private investment saw an increase of 8.5%, and the growth speed outperformed that of July by 0.2%. SMEs and MMBs have also performed better. The growth margin of added value for SMEs outperformed that of enterprises above designated sizes. Production and investment of high-tech enterprises saw rapid growth, and from January to August, the added value of high-tech enterprises saw an average two-year growth of 10.1%, and for high-tech enterprises, it saw an annual average two-year growth of 17% year-on-year. From January to August, the average two-year growth of high-tech enterprises and consumer electronic devices saw 9.9% of increase. Economic structure has continued to optimize. Investment in manufacturing from January to August hit 30% of growth year-on-year, and from January to August, the social investment increased by 10.7%. And from January to August, if you look at the enterprises above county levels, consumption in sports and cultural products saw an increase of 11.6% and 18.1% respectively. General trade also accounts for a larger proportion. From January to August, general trade products accounts for 62% of China's total trade. Startups and innovative activities are very active, and there are an increased number of market entities. And as of end of July, we have a total of 1.4 billion enterprises existing in China. We have seen a 1.7-fold increase for China's smart robots. So all these parameters show that China's overall fundamentals of economic recovery has not changed. We are maintaining a robust economic growth, but at the same time, we must be mindful that there are unfavorable conditions brought by the international situation as well as COVID-19. Going forward, we have to follow through the decisions made by CPC Central Committee and the State Council, engage in anti-cyclical micro adjustments so as to make sure that our economy performs within reasonable range. Thank you very much. I'm with CNBC. I have two questions. The first is regarding consumption. Can you tell us more about the reasons why there are drastic increase or decrease in some certain sectors, and what are the reasons, for example, for the mild growth in the petrochemical sector, and also online sales, and also sales via online streaming services are not growing exponentially, and what is the reason for that? And also, what are the trend of employment? For example, for the age group of 16 to 24, so what are the main pillars for employment of people falling into this age group? What are the major pressures that they are facing? Thank you very much. You are mainly asking about consumption and employment. Truly, in August, due to the impact of COVID-19, total retail sales dropped. In August, total social retail sales increased by 2.5%, and this is a slowdown of 6% against the same period last year. We have a decreased consumption during the vacation, and for dining and restaurants, it's dropped by 1.5%, and the business goods also decreased in terms of total social sales. And this is not just due to epidemic. This is because we are comparing against a robust set of data last year. For example, last year, there were strong and robust growths in terms of total retail sales of the society. For example, at the same period last year, it increased by 18%. If we look at this year and last year combined, the total retail sales of the society increased by 3.9%, and this shows that the overall situation has been very optimistic. If you look at the structure, the social retail sales saw stable momentum of growth in categories of products related to people's livelihood. Beverages saw an increase of 11.3%. If you look at the upgraded consumption categories, for example, in sports and cultural products, it saw an increase of 22.7% and 24% respectively, and both outperformed the parameters in August. Online sales was also very active, and from January to August, the increase of online sales hit 15%. All these indicators and parameters are signs that the overall situation of strong and robust economy has not changed. Going into the second half of the year, we have some new situations, but in general, we have a very good fundamental. China has 1.4 billion people. We have the largest middle class in the world, and the average per capita GDP hit $10,000, and this shows that the upgrading trend of consumption will not change. Employment has been maintained stable in general since the beginning of this year. The efficiency and revenue of enterprises are also kept in a good mood, and social security is improving, and social investment is also increasing, and this is conducive to improving people's shopping willingness. The business environment for consumption will continue to optimize, and this is also helpful to stabilizing and increasing consumption. And also, talking about employment, it has been maintained stable in general from January to August. We have added 9.38 million jobs in China across the country. If you look at the unemployment, the average unemployment rate from January to August was 5.1%. And in August alone, the unemployment rate was 5.1%, equaling that of July. In August, the unemployment rate for migrant workers was lower than that of the unemployment rate of urban areas. In August, one of the striking phenomena is that the unemployment rate for young people has dropped. The registered unemployment rate for youngsters was 15.3%, and this shows that our policies to stabilize employment for college graduates has been effective, and going forward, we have a number of new policies. The general situation is very sound, and also China is in a process of economic recovery, and this is conducive to stabilizing employment, and we have flexible employment measures and options that's adding to the possibility of job seeking for migrant workers. And going forward, we will continue to follow through these policies so as to dramatically improve the situation of employment. Next question, please.
I have two questions.
And with Bloomberg.
Looking at the PMI data, the new export order index has been falling. It's been below 50 since May, but actual exports have been rising consistently. How do you explain this discrepancy? Is this a matter of values versus volumes, or is this a question of, what is the reason for that? And the second question is, companies see export demand as contracting in the future. They're less confident about that, and the domestic sales of retail sales are also very, very weak. So what will be the driver for growth in the second half of the year? Thank you.
有翻译一下。
您好，我有2个问题。首先呢，我们看到了 PMI 的数据，然后呢，我也注意到，自从5月份开始呢，相关的这个出口的数据是下降到了50%以下。但是与此同时呢，一些出口的这个总量好像又有增长。那么在这个出口的价值和数量上，好像数字存在一些不匹配的问题，怎么解释这2个数字上升和下降之间的这个不匹配？第2点呢是关于出口，现在呢出口的这个需求好像正在收缩，很多公司也感觉到了压力。另外呢，内需相对来说也比较薄弱。那么在下半年，我们有什么措施能够应对这样的挑战？
谢谢你的提问，我想追问一下，您指的
Thank you for your question.
这个定
I want to
PMI 当
quickly
中是指
follow up.
订单吗？还是
You talked about PMI. Are you referring to orders?
Sorry. The question was, the PMI data shows that new export orders are below 50 and has been below 50 since May. But exports are rising and continue to rise. That is somewhat contradictory. If companies are less confident, yet exports are rising. I'm just asking if you have an explanation for that. And my second question was, what is the driver for growth in the second half of the year? Thank you.
第一个问题呢是关于订单的，因为我们看到5月份以来呢，订单数是在这个50以下，但是与此同时呢，这个出口又在不断的上升。那么我觉得订单数呢可能反映了一种这个公司的信心，如果数量下降呢，就表示他们的这个信心是不足的。但是这个出口的数值又在上升，那这2个之间的差异，应该怎么样去解释？
好的，明白。谢谢您的提问。应该说呢，这个
All right.
您指的
Thank you for your
应该是
question.
制造业中这个PMI 当中有新出口订单指数。那
So
么新出口这订单指数呢，主要是
in the
反映企业
PMI
对
parameter,
国内
there
需
is
求状况
this
的预期
export order
反映预期的
parameter.
那
And
么
this
同
is
时呢，这个
basically
货进出口
reflecting the
这个
expectations
这个
of
指标呢是
export
反映企
enterprises
业
about
向
foreign
这个
trade.
境外出口的这个
And also
经
we
历
have
一个是
imports
依稀
and
指标，一个
export
是实际的
parameters, and these are
出口
reflecting
状
the
况。
total volume or
那么
revenue of
由于
trade.
呢，从
So
这
there are
个
two
由
different
于
set
企
of
业呢接
parameters.
到这个出口订单到组织生产啊，然后
So
这个
after receiving the order,
出口货物的运输
and then you
到
need
报
to spend
关，
some
然
time
后呢，这
to
个到完成
prepare
出口
for
有一
the
个过程。
production, and then you need
从历史经验
to
来看呢，
declare
PMI 的这个
at
新订单指
the
数呢，
customs
对于
clearance
这个
and
出口
also
呢具有一定
conduct
的
and
先行性。
complete the
那么
export.
当然也
So
看到
there
了
is
这个
a
影响企
time
业出口
difference
这个出口的预
between
期
all
呢
those
因素
activities.
很多。那么这个制
Exports
造业的这个新出口订
expectation
单指
is
数呢和这
affected
个
by
实
a
际
lot
的
of
出口呢
factors.
这种实质的这种
The
关系
new
呢并
export
不稳定。
orders and also the
那么有时呢
actual
也会出现
amount
一
of
定的反差，
exports
这都
are
是
not
正常的。
necessarily consistent
那么
with one
比
another,
如
and
说呢，
sometimes
今
there
年以
is
来
a
呢，
discrepancy. This
随
is
着世界
only
经济的
normal.
逐步恢复，
For example,
那么
since
海外的
entering
这
this year
个
with
生产
the
供给呢是也
recovery
逐步
of
的增
world
加。
economy,
那么一些企业呢，就会
overall
预期，那么国内
supply
就是
from
因为去年呢，
overseas
有
has
很多我们一些出口呢是出口替
increased
代
as
性的。
well.
那么预期呢，国内生产替代
And
效应可
last
能会
year,
减弱，那么
There
出口
was
增
a
长的动能
decrease of
可能会
foreign
下
trade,
行。
of course, for a lot of
但是
countries.
呢，实际的情况来看呢，那么由于今年以来呢，有一
But
些
in
这个
reality,
变异病毒啊，这个传播呢，应该说
Since
超
this
出
year
预
we
期。
have
那
seen
么国外
a
的这
couple of
个海外的
variants
一些
that are
经济体
spreading
生产呢，实际
beyond
上还
our
受到了较大的这个限
expectation.
制。那么市场的需求还存在，
production activities in some foreign countries have been affected, and this has actually driven the growth of exports in China. So that is why there is this discrepancy between export expectation and actual export. In August, the export order expectation was below 50, and it saw a decrease for 3 consecutive months. In August, WTO released a overall order increase of 114%. So there is also a discrepancy between these two set of data. So to look at China's foreign trade, you need to use multiple parameters and indexes because economy is something very sophisticated. Not all the parameters or indexes match. So we need to look at the issue very objectively. Next question, please.
谢谢主持人。每日经济新闻记者提问。今年以来的话，我
And
国
with
汽
the
车
daily
出口的表现是十
economic
分亮眼。
news,
前8个月出
since
口额
this year
实现
China
翻
has
倍。
saw
那么
great
在全球
China has seen
汽
great
车行业缺
performance
芯的
of
背景下，为何我国
exported
汽车出口能够
vehicles
实现倍增？
against the
另外，
backdrop
对于
of
全
the
年的
storage of
外贸走势，国家主
chips
席
for the
有
auto
何预
industry.
判？谢谢。
How come China has
谢谢
maintained
您的提
a
问。
growth
我理解
momentum
呢，这个
for
汽车行业呢，今年确实呢
vehicles?
出口增长还是
Thank you for your question.
我想呢，在
The auto industry saw
整个
a
这个
great
汽车缺芯的这
momentum
种背景下呢，
of
保持这个出口
exports, and this
增
is
长表
truly
现确实
a
不
hard
容易。
one against
那
the
么我想，
backdrop
之
of
所以中国这
chip
个汽车
storages,
出口能保持
chip
小块增长，
shortages.
可能有2个因素，影
So
响
the
是比
reason
较
behind
比
that,
较这个
I
突
believe
出
there
的。
are two.
第一个来看呢，我们知道呢，汽车
The
的行业
first
呢，这个产业
is
链链条是比较长的，
we
相
know
关的
that
配套的这个
the auto
企
industry
业呢，
has
各
a
方面的要求
long
是比较高的。那么
industrial
我
chain,
们国家呢，应
which
该
also
说呢，产业体
requires
系呢
high
是比较
technology
完整，
from different
配套能
providers.
力
And
是
in
比较
China,
强的。
we have a
那么在全
comprehensive
球疫情这个背
landscape
景
of
下呢，
different industrial
很多的这
sectors,
个国
and
外的一
we are
些企
able
业
to
呢，它
quickly supply
在
goods
这
and
个
components,
在物流方面，在生
even
产工
during
艺
the
方面
times of
链条
COVID-19,
方面呢，都遇
when
到很
other
多问题。
countries
但是呢，我们国
encounter
家在这方面
difficulties in
有比
provision
较
of
好的
products
优
and
势，
also
我觉得这
in
是很重要的一个因
supply
素。
chain, and China is
那么
maintaining
第
a
二个方面来
competitive
看
edge,
呢，
and this is one very
中
important
国呢，应该
factor
说呢，在疫
for
情防控
China's
方面呢，在全
export
球范围
increase
内
of
做的是比较好的。国内
vehicles.
的生产的这个秩序，
Secondly,
生活的秩
China
序呢，
did
维持得较好。
relatively better
这样
in
也有利
epidemic
于
control,
生产的
and
稳
we
定
are
运
maintaining
行。
very good social
那
order,
么
and
当
that
然
is
呢，
also
这
very
个
conducive
出
to
口
the
这个汽车
stability
出
of
口增长
production
比较快，
activities.
和去年的低基数也有一定关系。
The rapid exports
那么
of
从全
vehicles
年来
is
看呢，
also
应该说呢，
related to the situation
今
we
年以来呢，
managed
这
to
个
reach at the end
货物
of
进出口
last year.
疫情状况呢，还是
So
保
in
持良好
general,
的这个态势。我们
the
看到
overall
前8个月
foreign
呢，
trade
货物进
has
口总额
maintained a
同比
good
增长了
momentum of growth
3.7%，
from
保持了较快的增长。
the first
那么从下阶段
8
来看呢，
months. The total foreign trade
拓入
volume has
这个
increased
进
by
口贸易的保持较快增
23%.
长，还有不少的有利
And
因素。
going
那么
forward,
总的来看呢，第一
there
点
are
来看
still
呢，这个世
some
界经济呢
favorable
整体是复
conditions.
苏虽然近期呢，
Number
由
one,
于
the
这个
world
疫
economy
情的一些
is
冲击呢，
recovering,
复苏势头有所放缓，但
although
总的
it
来
has
看，全年
been
来看呢，世界
affected
经济
by
总体复苏这种态
changing
势
situation of
会
the
持续。那
COVID-19.
么
But
外
in
需的
general,
扩大
the
呢，对国内
recovery
的出口
momentum is
拉动呢，还会持续的
there.
显现。
It's
那么
very
第二个方面来
obvious,
看
and
呢，
it will
像
continue to
前面说
drive
到的，国
foreign
内的
trade
这个
growth in
国的这个
China.
产业体系
And
比较完整，
secondly,
配套能力比较强，
China
生
has a
产的这个
comprehensive
整体的
landscape
状
of
况
industrial
比较好，
sectors.
那么有利于这
We
个
have a
企业的出口。
comprehensive industrial
那么第三
chain,
点
and
来
this
看
is
呢，
also conducive to
这个稳外贸政策
exporting
呢还会持续
enterprises.
的显效。那么一些外贸的
Number
新业
three,
态啊，我们
China's
说
foreign trade
跨境电
policy
商
will continue
这个海外仓等等
generate
的这
a
些的新业态
impetus
的发展
to
呢，对于
China's
外贸
foreign
的增
trade.
长呢，仍然会
There
发
are
挥助
some
力的作
business
用。
firms and
同时呢，
business
随着我们国
modes,
家这个
and
共建
this
“一带一
will
路”
help
稳步的
grow
推进，我们
China's
看到呢，
exports as China
中欧班列的开行呢，
continues with its Belt and Road Initiative, and there will be more favorable conditions unleashed with the China-Europe Express service and also
第四方面
China's
还要看到呢，随
enhanced
着国内经济
collaboration
的恢
with
复呢，我们的
European
进口
countries, and
是
there
扩
will
大，
be more
还有利
favorable
于进口
conditions, and
是
also
较快的增长。我们
China's
看到呢，实
imports
际上今年以
is
来
also
呢，
widening,
从
and
累计
this
增
is
速来
also
看呢，
good
这个
to
我们的进
export.
口增速呢实际上是快于这个出
Since
口增速
entering
的。
this
那
year,
么我们也看到呢，这
imports
个
growth
中
has
国的这
actually
个外贸的发
outperformed
展，
that
我
of
们的这个
exports.
国际合作，不仅对于中国的这个
we are also
同时呢，也助力了
having
全球经济的复苏。
greater international cooperation, and this is also conducive to the recovery of the world economy. Thank you. Next question, please.
谢谢路透社提问。8月份的消费
And
增
with
长有一定
writers
的
in
能力，
August,
会出台哪些刺激消费的
consumption
政
growth
策？
is
另外呢，
relevant,
今年第三季
relatively
季的
sluggish, and what are the measures you have to
宏观政策
stimulate
支持？
this sector? So what are the macro policy support you're going to have for the second half of this year for this sector?
我已经谈
Thank
到
you for your
了
question.
8月份的这个消费的增长放缓。
Actually, I have already mentioned that the
总的消费恢复的态势
mild increase of consumption is mainly due to COVID-19, but the general trend has been very optimistic.
有这个很多有力的支撑啊。
There are more favorable conditions going into the second half of this year for China's economy to recover steadily.
经济这个
Number
产生
one,
发展的态势
China is in the midst of industrial upgrading, and this is a very obvious trend. You can see that despite the COVID-19 pandemic globally,
还是服务业呢，
if you look at China's industry and the service sector,
还是比较明显。那么1至8月份呢，我们看到的这个高技术制造
the
业
upgrading momentum is obvious, and from January to
服务业
August,
当中的这个信息传输
high-tech
的
enterprises saw a average two-year increase of 13%. Information transmission and IT saw a average two-year growth of 29%.
态势呢仍在持续。那么第二方面来看呢，
So this
国内
means
内
that
需的
we
支撑
are
还是比较有
registering
利的。
registering
那么从消费看
steady
呢，尽管
strong
8月
growth
份、7、8月份社零总额有所
by
回落，
consumption,
那么
although
主要是由于信情
total social retail
冲
sales
击的因素。那么支撑消费的
dropped
就
in
业
July
呢
and
保持
August,
比较稳定。
but this is mainly due to the COVID-19, and the overall
同时呢，
employment
居
is
民消费结构
maintained
升级这种态势
stable,
呢
and
仍
this
在
is
持续。那么随着疫
conducive
情防控的
to
逐步见
stabilizing
效，
consumption
消费拉动呢仍然
as
会
China
继续
makes
显现。
more progress in
同时
continuing the
从投资来
epidemic.
看呢，
Consumption
随着企业
will
效益
be
的改
further
善，
unleashed
支持实
if
体
you
经
look
济
at
发展的
investment,
政策显效呢，
and
投资
because
的
the
活力在
enterprises
增强。
are
我们看到
changing
呢，
or
1至
improving
8
their
月份呢，
situations, and they are
制造业
registering
1至8月份制造业
more
投资的年均
vitality,
增
and
长
from
了
January to
3.3%，
August,
比上个月呢是加快
investment in
0.2%。
manufacturing
保持了
industry
持续
increased
这个
by
回升的态势。
13.3%,
从
and this is
民间投资来
2
看，
percentage
1
points
至8月份
wider
民间投
than
资
the
呢
same
年均
period
增长
last year.
3.9%，
From January
比
to
1至7月份的加快 0.5%。
August, private
投资的活
investment
力
in
的增强。
social retail sales
下阶
increased
段
by
呢，我们看到今年
13.5%,
是
and
十
this
四
is
规划
also
的
a very
第一
good
年。
sign
那么
going
随着
into the
十四五规划
next
重
phase.
大项
Bear
目
in
的
mind, this
陆
is the
续
first year of
开
China's
开工
14th
建设，
five-year
那么
plan.
相关的基建方面的投资
As
会
more
逐步改善。
enterprises reopen and
那么第
recover
三个方
their
面来看，
activities, and infrastructure
改革
building
开放的红
activities
利
will
呢会
also
适时
be
的释放。那
resumed,
么放管服改革
and
呢，应该
we
会
will
深入推
see
进。
a
国内
more
的市场营销
dividend
环境呢是持
of
续改善的，
China's
创业创
efforts
新
in
的势头
deepening
良好。
reforms, and also
那么
in
市场主体呢是快速增
delegating
加，那么一
administration
些
and
技术含量
streamlining
高、绿色
approval.
低碳的新产品
Some
也加速增
high-tech
长。
products
那么
and green and
线
low
上
carbon
线下融合
products
加
we
快，
also saw
新业态呢也是不断的涌
dramatic
现。
growth. There is a
同时呢，这
growing
个高水
momentum
平开
of
放的稳步推
O2O
进，共建“一
activities.
带一路”的
In the meantime,
高
we
质量发展
are
成效呢
expanding
是
China's
显现。
openness, and
那
we
么1
are
至8月份呢，
deepening
我
our
们国家对
efforts
“一
in
带一
Belt
路”沿
and
线国
Road
家的进出
Initiative.
口
And
同
from
比增
January
长
to
了
August,
24.6%。
imports and exports of
那
China
么
with
同时呢，
Belt and Road countries saw an
随
increase
着
of
这个营商环境不断改善，对外
24.6%
开放的这个水平
year
呢
on year.
不断
As
扩大。
China improves
看到呢，
its
中国
business
呢继续成
environment,
为外商投
as
资的
China
热点。
further opens
那
to
么
the
7月
outside
份呢，
world, China
我
will
国利用外
continue
资呢同比增长了
to be
25.5%。
a hot destination
那
for
么第
foreign
四方面呢
investments.
应该看到这个
And
支
from
持实
January
体
to
经济发展
August,
的政策
the
呢会
utilization
继
of
续
foreign
显效。
capital increased by
今年以来呢，
23.6%.
一系列减
Since
税
this
降
year,
费金融支持实体经济
we
的
have
政策
released
呢
a number of
持续
policies
的这
to
个
cut
发
the
挥作用。
tax
那么
and
企业效
also
益呢保持
cut the
较快增长。
fees
那么1到
imposed
7月份
upon
呢，
enterprises,
规
and
模以
this
上
has
企业的利润
driven
呢
the
同比增长了
efficiency
10.3%。
increase of
那么
enterprises.
2年平均增长了20.2%。总的来
From
看
January
呢，
to
随着统筹
July,
经济防
the
控和经济社
profit
会
of
发展的加
enterprises
速推
above
进，
designated
宏
sites
观
increased
宏
by
观政策的跨周期调整有效
53.3%.
实施。
So
那么
in
经济运
general,
行呢
the
有望保持
counter
在合理区间。那么推动高质量发展呢
cyclical
也会不断取得新
macro
的成效。
economic
谢谢。
adjustments
好，请继续
has
提问。
turned very effective.
好，先这边第3排吧。第 第三排这位记者。
Next question, please.
谢谢。第一财经记者提问。那么8月份的 PPI 的同比增速是创
First
年内的
financial
新高。
news,
那么下游
and
企业
in
的利润空
August,
间也是
the
面临这个压缩
PPI
的情况。
saw a
如何来
record
看
high
待
in a
PPI 的后
year,
续走
and
势？它会
in
是否
the
是会触顶？
next
那
few
么有
months,
哪
and
些
there
切实
will
的
be
措施
some
会减轻
pressures.
小游企业
What
的
is
压
your
力？谢
general
谢。
comment on
谢谢
PPI,
您
and
的
what are
提
the
问。
measures that you
确
have
实呢，
to
那个8月份
reduce
呢，
the
这个
burdens of
工业
SMEs?
生产者出厂价格呢，
Thank you
同
very
比
much
上涨了
for your
6%，
question.
涨幅呢，
PPI
上月扩大了0.5个百
in
分点。应该
August
说呢，又
saw
创出了
a
今年以来
widening
的
growth
较
of
高的一
only
个水平。
0.5 percentage
那么
point
PPI
against
涨幅
July,
最大
and
呢，
this
主
is
要
a
从结构上来看呢，
relatively
主要还是由于
high
生产资料价格这个扩大带
performance
动。那么8月
in
份的
this
生
year,
产
and
资料
this
价
is
格呢，
mainly due to
同比
the
上涨了
price
12.7%，
increase of
涨幅
raw
比上月扩
materials.
大了0.7个
In
百分点。
August, it's increased
那么
by
具体来看呢，其中主要是3个
12.7%,
行业的这个拉动比较大，
widened
一
by
个是煤炭
0.7 percentage
啊，
point
化工
against the
和钢铁。
previous month, and this is mainly due to
这些行
coal,
业的这个
petrochemical,
推
and
动呢，
steel products.
既跟这个需求扩大有关系，也和这个
The
生
driving
产的供给
force
偏紧呢
or the increase of these
同时
sectors,
呢，还
and they
和
are not
前
just
期的一些上游价格的这种推动。
related to the
的作用是有
macro
关的。
control policies and
那么
also
对于
to
PPI 的
the
走势呢，
price
我们想应
adjustment
该说
at
呢，
the
目
upstream
前
and
来看呢，这
downstream
个短期内我们还
enterprises.
会高位运行一段时
For
间。
China's PPI, in the
未
short
来的走势
term,
呢，
it will
整个看
maintain
法还需
at
要
a
观察。
high
那么
level,
一方面呢，
and
国际的
going
大宗商
forward,
品
we
价
will
格目前
continue
来看
to monitor
仍
this
然保持高位，
parameter
虽然
very closely.
近期呢
And right now,
涨
it's
幅
standing
呢
at the
有所
high
回落
position,
有所回落。但是
although
目前看这个
its
走势
growth
还
has
存在一定的不
slowed
确定
down
性。
recently, but in
那么国
general,
内的上游
there are
部
some
分上游行业
uncertainties
产
for
品
its
供求
trend
关
going
系还比较
forward.
紧张，
Domestically,
价格存在上涨
there
的
is
压
a
力。
tight
那么
supply
同时
and
呢，也
demand
看到另一方
relationship
面
for
呢，
some
国
upstream
内的保
enterprises,
供
and
稳
there
价
is
的措施
also
呢
this pressure of
也在逐步
price
显效，一
increase.
些这个
But in the meantime,
商品的
those
价格，
price
上游行业的商品
stabilizing
价格
policies in
涨幅
China
有所放缓啊。那么同时呢，
are
随着这
taking
个
some
价
effect,
格的上涨呢，企业的生产积极
and
性
with
实
the
际上也是在
price
增加
increase,
的。那么也
the
有利于价格
enthusiasm
稳定。
of those enterprises in
那么
productivity is
总的来
also
看
on
呢，
the
也
rise,
说
and this is
对
actually
于下阶段
conducive
的 PPI 走势呢，
to
还需要
stabilizing the
观察。
price.
谢谢。
So in general,
好，继
we
续提
have
问。
to look very closely about the trend of PPI
好，先这
in
个
the second half of this year. Thank you. Next question, please.
谢谢。凤凰卫视的记者，我们关注到近期
I'm
恒大
with
的
Phoenix
违约的风险正
News.
在攀升，也引起了市场的广泛
And
关
there
注。
is
那请问专
growing
业人如何
risk
看
of
事件
default
对房地产行业的
for
影响，
the
以及行业
debts
的
held
走势
by
未来如何？
Evergrande, and how will that affect
谢谢您的提
the
问啊。我有注意
industry
到呢，最近这个
in general in
刚
China?
呃
Thank you very much for your
一
question.
些
I have
消息，
noticed
总的看呢，那个一些
some
大型房产
information
企业呢，现在
from
这
online.
个运营过程中呢，
Some
面
large
临
scale
面临
real
了一些
estate
出现了一些困难。
developers, and they have
对于
encountered
整
some
个行业发展呢，
difficulties
这
in
个
their
影响值得
operation.
观察。那么从整个
We will
这个
need
房地
to
产疫情
continue
来看呢，今年以来呢，
following the situation.
随
But
着
in
国
general,
家这个坚持各个地区各部
since
门呢
this
坚持
year,
房住不炒的这种原则啊，持续
as
的
China
稳
holds firm to the policy that
房价
houses
稳
are
定价
for
比
people
起
to live in,
整个的这
not
个
for
运
people to
行呢，整体
speculate, and this is
是
very
平稳的态势。
positive in
那么从主要
maintaining
数据来
the
看呢，
overall expectation of home buyers.
那么一至
So
8月份的房地产
in
销售
general,
面积呢，
from January to August,
同比
the
增长
total
这个2年
sales
平均
of
5.9%，
property
比上月呢
saw
一
an
至7月份的
average
回落1.1%。
two-year
那么
increase of
商品房销售额的
5.9%.
2年平均增长了11.7%，回落了1.4个百分点。那
The
么
total
房地产
revenue
投
of
资呢保持基本稳
home
定。
sales increased
1至8月份呢，
11.7%
2年
over the
平均
past
增
two
长
years, and from
17.7%，
January
比
to
上月回落
August,
0.3个百分
the
点。
average two-year
那么这些情况呢，是
growth
说明呢，
was 11.7%, and this is
各方面呢
0.3 percentage point lower
持续的
than
这
the
个
previous
推进房地产市场
year.
的这个调控啊，持续推进房地产调控，促进
So
这个房地
this
产市场
tells you that
抑制一些
the
不合理的
macro
需求，
control policies in the
逐步释放
real
了这
estate
个
sector
正常需
has
求的这个释放。
suppressed some unreasonable
房地产市场
demand,
里面
and
呢，
it has
随
also
着这
guaranteed
个
the unleashing of some
这个相关的这个制
normal
度的完善，
home
比如
purchase
说这个
demand.
多主体
So we are
更为
improving
多
the
渠道保障
systems.
勾租并举的住房制度不断完
For
善。
example,
房地产市场呢
multi-channel provision, multi-channel guarantee, and with that, we hope that it will continue to grow in the coming years.
最后面那位女记者，对。
Next question, please.
谢谢主持人，我是21世纪经济报的记者。
Thank you very much. I'm with the 21st Century Economic News, and if you look at the data in August, manufacturing parameter is on the rise. And you mentioned there are uncertainties in the coming months, and there are also uncertainties for major commodities. And so what are your observation or prediction going forward? Thank you for your question. For the manufacturing, if you look at the average 2-year growth, and it's on an increase. And this is due to the overall economic recovery of China. No matter it is the first quarter or the second quarter, the productivity utilization rate for the manufacturing industry has been improving. In the meantime, China has policies to support the development of real economy, and this is helpful for those enterprises to reduce their burdens. Since this year, the cost of per 100 yuan revenue has decreased for enterprises. So this tells you that the overall efficiency of enterprises has increased. We also should be mindful that the overall momentum of growth for the Chinese economy has not changed. So all this are conducive to the confidence boosting of those enterprises. So in the long run, we have every good reason to believe that manufacturing in China will continue to perform very well. Last 2 questions, please. Thank you very much. I'm with Front Cover News, and just recently the NBS released that the PPI in August was 51.1%. PMI has been going down for 5 consecutive months, and this is a record low for 3 years. So what is your view on that? And some say that the August data saw a new low. And what is your comment? Thank you very much. The manufacturing PMI is due to both domestic factors and international situation. Here domestically, as you saw that there are twists and turns of the COVID-19 situation, and there is a slowdown of our economic situation. And globally, the manufacturing PMI was 14.1%, and it saw a decrease 3 months in a row, and this will inevitably pose some unfavorable impact for China's manufacturing PMI. And in August, China was hit by the Delta variant, and this has slowed down the activities of some enterprises, and some enterprises witnessed tremendous pressure in August. But in general, the manufacturing PMI in August in China was 50.6%, and for 18 months, it's in a low growth scope. So, but this is also telling you that this is a stable situation, and we have every reason to believe that it will pick up because China has very good fundamentals. We have strong resilience of our economy. And also this year marks the first of the 14th five-year plan, and we will kick off some major projects. We will release some key policies to further boost the confidence of enterprises. And also number 3, there are policies at the central level that will help reduce the burden for the enterprises. For example, just recently the central bank released another 300 billion RMB worth of re-loans for enterprises. Going into the second half of this year, as China claims more success against COVID-19, the preferential policies for enterprises will continue to work, and this will add the confidence of enterprises. Thank you very much. Red Store News. Social retail sales has slowed down, and does that mean that there are potential space or room for further unleashing social consumption? what are the key regions that needs to be catching up? So what is your comment on this parameter going forward? So when I was answering the question from CNBC, I briefly touched upon this question. Although recently there is a slowdown of the total social retail sales, but the general trend has not changed. If you look at consumption, green products, smart products have tremendous amount of space for further growth as China enters into a old age society, and there will be tremendous amount of potential for products related to old age care. So we have to unleash effective provision. We have to add the products of smart home appliances and also low carbon products so as to constantly meet people's desire for a better life. In general, China's employment is also kept in a stable situation. The increase of jobs will help increase the shopping power of residents across China. China is also improving its social security network, and this will also add to the shopping intention of people, and China will also dramatically increase or improve its business environment, and this will also add to the buying power of the Chinese people. All right, thank you very much to Mr. Fu, and this is the end of today's presser. Thank you.